It was supposed to be a quick visit. My friend Liam had gone missing a few days ago, and the last anyone saw of him was near the old mansion on Miller Road. Determined to find him, I ventured there alone, armed with a flashlight and my phone. The house was an imposing structure, its windows broken, the walls overgrown with ivy. As I entered, the heavy, musty air filled my lungs, and the silence pressed against me like a physical weight. I moved cautiously down the dark, narrow hallway, feeling my pulse quicken with every creak of the floorboards. At the end of the corridor, my flashlight landed on something that made my stomach drop, a figure seated in a chair, perfectly still. I moved closer, horrified to realize it wasn't a mannequin, it was Liam. His limbs were contorted in bizarre angles, his eyes wide with frozen terror, mouth twisted into a silent scream. Ropes bound his body to the chair, keeping him upright in this grotesque, doll-like pose. A faint, scraping sound echoed behind me. I whipped around and saw a tall, thin figure stepping out of the shadows, his face obscured by a filthy leather mask. He held an iron brace and thick, tangled strings in his hands. "Another visitor," he rasped, his voice a low, grating whisper. "I've been waiting for you." I stumbled back, nearly tripping over an overturned table, but he advanced, lifting the brace menacingly. "They all try to run," he said, his voice chillingly calm. "But they always end up staying." I tried to run, but before I could make it to the door, he grabbed my arm in an iron grip, twisting it painfully. I thrashed, desperate to escape, but he forced me into the chair beside Liam's, securing my arms with a strap. His twisted grin gleamed from beneath the mask as he whispered, "Let's make you perfect." My heart raced as I sat strapped in the chair, every muscle in my body screaming with fear. The killer tightened the brace around my arm, forcing it into a rigid, unnatural position. Pain shot through me as he twisted my wrist to mirror Liam's grotesque posture. "Hold still," he whispered, his breath hot and rancid through the mask. "It'll only hurt if you resist." I watched helplessly as he tightened more braces around my wrists, ankles, and shoulders, binding me in place. His hands moved with an unsettling care, as if he were arranging delicate porcelain. My skin burned as he fastened each brace, the metal biting into my flesh, drawing blood where it pressed too tightly. I fought against the restraints, but he only tightened them further, chuckling softly at my struggle. He moved to the wall and grabbed a handful of thick strings, each one coated in something dark and sticky. With a calm precision, he began threading the strings through the braces, pulling my limbs taut, forcing my body into an agonizingly stiff pose. "Now you'll fit in nicely with the others," he murmured. Through the haze of pain, I noticed rows of other dolls' former victims, frozen in agonized expressions, their limbs twisted and shattered, their eyes dull and lifeless. The reality hit me like a punch to the gut. He was turning his victims into human dolls, preserving them in his twisted collection. Desperation fueled my strength. I managed to twist my hand free just as he was securing my neck brace. Summoning every ounce of courage, I grabbed a nearby shard of glass and slashed at his arm. He let out a howl, recoiling in shock, and I seized the moment, breaking free from the chair and staggering toward the exit. But before I could reach the door, he recovered, his footsteps pounding after me. "You'll regret that," he snarled, his voice twisted with fury. I bolted down the hallway, my body aching from the restraints, but fear drove me forward. The killer's footsteps grew louder, his breathing harsh and animalistic as he pursued me. I darted into a small storage room, slamming the door shut and jamming a chair beneath the handle. My chest heaved as I scanned the room, my eyes falling on a window at the far end. It was small, but if I could break through, I might just fit. I grabbed a heavy metal tool from the floor and smashed the glass, wincing as shards cut into my hands. Just as I began to crawl through, the door shuddered violently as the killer tried to break in. "You can't escape," he growled, his voice more sinister than ever. "You'll be my masterpiece." I ignored him, wriggling through the broken window, feeling glass scrape against my skin. Just as I pulled my legs through, the door splintered, and his masked face appeared in the opening, his eyes blazing with fury. I hit the ground hard, my body screaming in pain, but I forced myself up and staggered toward the road, praying for a way out. The road was deserted, but headlights suddenly appeared in the distance. I waved frantically, relief flooding over me as the car screeched to a halt. I collapsed into the passenger seat, gasping out, "Drive. Just drive." Hours later, the police searched the mansion, but all they found were empty rooms, no bodies, no twisted dolls, only the stench of decay. They chalked it up to trauma, dismissing the killer as a figment of my imagination. But I know what I saw, and I know he's still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to finish his collection. And every time I close my eyes, I see his twisted mask, hear his whispered promise, "You'll never be free."